Arline Fifield. I was in the WACs in the nursing corps from 1941 or 42 to late 46. The story was after Pearl Harbor, and my brother was drafted. My father just missed being a World War I veteran, and he was so upset about that. So he joined, and he had 8 kids and 3 grandchildren. But he joined the Navy. And I thought, well, I was living in Minneapolis, working there, and I thought, well, gee whiz, I got to do something. So 3 sisters joined the Navy, 4 sisters, and I joined the WACs. Well, this is Mother and Hazel. She was in the Navy. Railed was in the Navy. Colleen was the baby, so she wasn't in the service. This is Dad, he was Navy. This is Victoria, she was Navy. Fern was Navy. Brian was Army. She was not in the service. It's Jean and me in the Army. And after basic training, they needed nurses so badly, and so there weren't enough nurses volunteering. And so they tested several people and asked us if we would be interested in going into the nursing business, and I said, just what I've been wanting to do all my life. And so they sent me with a group of 10 to El Paso, Texas, which is a horrible place to be. And it's just across the line is Juarez, New Mexico. And we were there and had classes from 6 o'clock in the morning until 12 o'clock at night. And then we'd go back to the barracks and study for the next morning. And this went on for a year and a half, I guess it was. Then they asked us what we would like to do, what hospital we would like to go. Well, all my cousins and Dad and everybody was in the Pacific from North Dakota. And so, of course, I picked the hospitals on the West Coast. So what did they do? But they sent me to Camp Edwards Hospital, military hospital in Massachusetts. And I cried practically all the way to Massachusetts. And of course, that's on a train, not a plane. They didn't do that in those days. So at any rate, I got there, and I went in the station information, and I said, how do I get to Camp Edwards? And they said, well, you get a bus out here, the military bus, and take it to Buzzards Gulch. And I thought, oh my, what am I getting into here? And it was the most thrilling experience I've ever had. They were just wonderful people. And I met my husband there. He was a patient of mine. And it all started from there. I just felt like I should do something. There were so many women doing things that I wasn't interested in doing, so I joined the WACs. There was a lot of bad things that said about the WACs. A lot of people made fun of it. In fact, my future mother-in-law was kind of insulted that her son wanted to marry somebody that was in the WACs. I was in Minneapolis, and I just thought the world is coming to an end. It was just horrible. That's why I went back to my family to discuss this whole thing. And of course, Mother was very upset of course. She was a Gold Star mother later, of course. But, I really felt terrible, and so the only thing for me to do was to join. Do what I could. After we got through it, El Paso, that was the William Beaumont. You might want to put that down, I don't know. William Beaumont Orthopedic Hospital, and it was probably the most famous orthopedic hospital in the country at that time. Of course, it wouldn't be now, but at any rate, from there we were sent to Austin, Texas, where the base was. So we were put in a base hospital for 2 weeks to, get used to our new knowledge and everything. So it was kind of fun when these kids coming in, and I just have hurt so badly, and all that jazz, and they wanted to know if you'd ever given a shot before or taken blood before. And of course, we did everything. And now you have special nurses to take blood, and you don't dare touch that, But then you did everything. And so you tell them how you learned to give shots, which was in an orange instead of a human being, of course. But that was fun with these young kids. You'd elaborate on all the things that went on in training. But we were glad to get out of the station hospital because they were people that were really sick, and they were just gold bricking. So when we got into the really sick patients, my husband was flown from the Battle of the Bulge to London for his surgery because they couldn't do it there in Germany. And the doctor that operated on him was from his hometown in Massachusetts. So after the surgery, he called Don's mother and father and spoke to them and said, "Your son I just finished doing successful surgery on him. He'll be home soon." Well, it could be very uplifting and it could be very disturbing, but there were 28 patients to a ward, and we didn't have enough help. But I really worked, and there weren't enough nurses, so you'd have to have that many patients for one nurse. And you could have somebody come from the emergency room down to your ward, and it could be very serious. One man was bleeding to death. He had a stomach wound. And why they sent him back to the States before he was healed enough, I don't know, but they did. And that could be very rewarding because you're helping him to live. But the other part was fun because the men were so much like family. And they were all for Don and me dating. And so they put pillows in his bed so that you couldn't tell that we went to a movie on the grounds, on the fort. So at any rate, it was a wonderful experience. I wouldn't give it up for anything. I could give you some personal stories that
Sure.
people dying, but it's just too emotional to me. One case was he was dying, this patient, a very young man, early 20s, and he was from Ohio. I don't remember his name now. I remember his wife's name was Grace. And the reason I remember that is because I have a great-granddaughter named Grace. But she was on her way to the hospital. But she was coming by train, of course. And the doctors realized that he was not going to make it till she got there. So everybody in the ward kept saying, "Arline, pretend you're Grace, please." So I'm holding this man in my arms. But he didn't make it, and Grace didn't get there. So it was I just don't remember his name. Doesn't matter, but I think that was the day my husband fell in love with me. There were a lot of them that were older. I was surprised. And why would they be drafted? So there were a lot of volunteers there. They were somewhere near Alaska for repairs. And I don't know what ship Dad was on. I don't know anything about it because I was busy with my own life, you know. And but my brother told me about this, and he said that they've finished the repairs and were going back to where they were supposed to be, and they passed Hawaii and got out a little ways from there, and their ship, no, Dad had an appendix attack, and they just didn't have anything in the ship to take care of him, so they went back to Hawaii and dropped him off there at the hospital. And then they went on their way, but the ship was blown up and everybody was lost the next day. And so Dad was there in Hawaii. And then they kept him there for a couple of years to rebuild Hawaii, to help rebuild it. Oh yes, I remember it very well. Don and I were on a date. He was in college at the time, out of the service, and he came out to camp for the weekend. And I had the weekend off, so we were walking down the street in Buzzards Bay, Massachusetts, and all the fire sirens were going off, and we said, "What in the world is going on?" We had just gone to a movie, and so people were going down honking their horns and everything, and another couple, a young couple, were in a convertible, and they drove up and said, "Hop in, let's go to such and such a town." So we did, and there was a big celebration there. We got back to the barracks about, I don't know, 4 o'clock in the morning. So that's what happened when we heard about the war ending. It was wonderful, and of course, Mother spent most of the time crying because everybody was home, including my husband. And I had 2 sisters that had married military men. And one was in Hawaii. She was secretary to a chaplain, and she married his assistant eventually. So at anyway, we were all there, and everybody was home. And we were out to the farm where my sister and her husband owned 5,000 acres. That's why he didn't go. But it was fabulous. And of course, everybody's hugging all the time, you know. I had a very close-knit family. I had a wonderful commanding officer, and she knew that Don and I were planning to get married. She had a dinner shower for me, and everybody in the division was there. Just wonderful. And they took care of us like we were their family, you know. And so she knew we were set on the 20th of June to be married. And she called me in one day and she said, "Arline, I think you and Don need to up your date a little bit because the division has been transferred to California on the 8th of June, or the 21st of June. And so I called Don and he talked with his parents, and that was their wedding date, the 20th. And so he said, "Well, let's talk again. We'll both think about it." So we thought about it and decided on June 7th. And the day after the 20th, the outfit was shipped to California. But I was still in the service. See, I had, they don't discharge you just like that. Took a while. So I was sent to another camp. And I worked in the post office then. And I got to know a lot of the German prisoners in Camp Devens then. The interesting thing is, about 10 years ago, I had a medical problem that I had to go to the St. Joe's Hospital and have some x-rays and stuff, and this fellow was so good at it, and all types of things I was not used to and didn't even know existed, And so he started talking about his grandmother, who was in World War II. And I said, "Oh, really?" And I said, "Where was she?" And he said, "I don't really remember her, but," he said, "I've heard so many stories about what a wonderful group she had." And she was transferred from someplace in Texas to be in charge of a group of WAC nurses and go with them up to Massachusetts. And I said, "Oh, really?" So he couldn't remember exactly what all happened. He was probably in his 40s. And I just encouraged him to talk and talk and talk. And so we were going to meet, and I was going to get my regiment picture out. And he was going to try to find the pictures that his grandmother gave him. We never did meet. He may still be at St. Joe's, I don't know. The funny part of it is, when I first went in, first got to Edwards, they always had to have a man in the military in charge of the women nurses, if you please, even if he might be not capable of being a nurse. But they had to be in charge of the women. This is because we're women. Can you believe that? But when this particular man was helping the nurse and doctor behind the tented bed, and he saw the first blood, and he almost passed out, and he took him out, and the doctor said, "Arline, get in here." Isn't that something? I really didn't. I don't remember ever having that feeling. But as I said, see, we're not allowed to go into Juarez, Mexico, even though we had very little time off. We heard about the good restaurant in there. And so they would take us in by bus, a group of nurses. And they had men stand guard with guns outside the bus while we went in and had dinner. There might be 10, 12 of us. Isn't that something? But I never felt threatened. I always felt protected. Oh, I don't think it changed me at all. I think my mother was always taking care of somebody. She was the oldest of 5 girls, so I don't think it changed, and I was a lot like she was. Growing up, I was next to the oldest of 8 kids, and I was little mother. So I don't think it's changed me at all. Veterans Day, my flag is right out there. And there's always a special thing at church for veterans. It means a great deal, but it'll go by. They'll forget us. That's okay. Time goes on.